ahead and get started with the special city commission meeting for Monday, November 3rd, 2025. If I can please have the city clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Villa Vasquez.
Present.
Commissioner Caldwell. Commissioner Howington.
Here.
Commissioner Novick.
Here.
Commissioner Santiago.
Here.
Vice Mayor Harriet.
Here.
Mayor Villa.
Here.
Here.
This time, can we please stand for the pledge, and I'll have Commissioner Novick lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. At this time, we're going to go into additions or deletions for the special commission meeting, which this should not be on here, Joyce. It's a special commission meeting. All right, we're going to go into action items. If I can please have whoever's going to talk to us about the fire station assessment requirements. Chief Bush.
Good evening. Chief Busher, I'm here for the fire department to talk on behalf of the fire station project that I've been working on with the city manager and was previously worked on by Chief Bill Snyder. So I got a small presentation to present to y'all. If you let me go through the presentation, then we can probably do questions, but if there's something that you really need to ask during the presentation, just stop me. I'm okay with it, but I might answer it in the presentation.
Just
So-
a quick point of order. For the record, Commissioner Caldwell's here.
Ready? Okay, so Stations Project 2025 for the city of Deltona initially started with Chief Bill Snyder and talking about how we go about planning for the future. So things we're going to talk about tonight is why we update, what we should update, and where we should go with updates, how it's data-driven to get to where we got to get, build versus renovate. Is there a choice? Is there not a choice? And service we provide, because it really comes down to the service we provide about what we decide or what y'all decide that is the next option. Oh, I lost my clicker. I might have to stand at the podium.
You're clicking on the clicker instead of the next button. There you go.
All right, so let's take a look at our fire stations. First of all, Station 61, in case you've never seen them, looks like this currently. It is a building that was built in 1974 originally, making it 51 years old. There was some renovations, especially to the administration side, and also some of the operation side was gutted out on the inside. But the structure itself is a 1974 structure. It is currently at capacity. What's capacity for that station? A battalion, a transport, and an engine runs out of that station. There's 3 people on every engine. There's 2 people on every transport and 1 person on every battalion, plus it staffs the majority of all the administration personnel on the other side of the building. Station 62, the one that's on Diamond, looks like this currently. It is a station that's built back in the neighborhood. It was built in 2005, 20 years ago. Property was gotten back from the city at the time, and that's why they built on that property. It kind of sits back a little bit in the neighborhood. Chief Snyder kind of originally thought that maybe it sat too far back, and we have to transport, and it takes a few minutes to get out to the main road. So it may not or may not be in the best place, depending on how we go about what we do in the future. Who's there right now? There's only 1 engine there, but we are trying to get a 4th transport put there, which would make 2 more people and 1 transport unit there. This is Station 63, pretty old station, kind of outdated. Built in 1978, it's 47 years old. It also used to maintain maintenance out there. Used to be the volunteers used to be out there. It was originally staffed for 1 station or 1 crew to be out of. Right now, there's 5 operational personnel on a minimum staffing. That's a transport and an engine runs out of there every day. The location is awesome, but the station itself is a little outgrown and a little outdated. Station 64 used to be, when I first got hired here, was a trailer. So we've gone a little farther in the years, but it is still a metal building that was really not supposed to be for a permanent build for a long, long term. It's been there since 1996. It's 29 years old. We've had several maintenance issues with it over the years, especially in the last couple of years. This year, we just got a whole lot of leaking fixed on it, hopefully. We haven't had any heavy rain since they actually did some of the work. We're kind of fearful that there's some more maintenance down the road for this station. But right now, it's maxed out. It's our smallest station. It's maxed out. It's got a transport unit and an engine out of it, and we can only staff 5 people there no matter what. We max out at 5. Station 65, one of our stations that was built a little newer, and it's kind of built for the modern days because it has things like individual bunk rooms, updated bathrooms, training room, for both community and also training the firefighters in-house. So it's also a solar station. It's kind of built for the green look and the green usage of energy. It's not the best at it because when it was built, it was a little new technology, but it's definitely one of the better buildings we have. Built in 2012. It's 13 years old. Like I said, it has individual bunks and better updated bathrooms. And who's there currently? One crew's right there, but they co-staff an engine or a tower, depending on which one's in service, and a squad. They also maintain the marine unit. They also maintain the TRT rescue team trailer and truck. So there's not a whole lot of people there, but there's a lot of equipment there. For those of you who came to the university or have toured that station, you've definitely seen how much equipment's at that station. So let's talk a little bit about call volume because that does matter, right? That's what we're kind of here for. So in 2010, we ran 8,311 calls. 2024, we ran 11,950 calls. And that's call volume. That means when dispatch gives out a call, it comes across the screen, and that's the call number. It gets an incident number. However, not always does just one unit go with each call. So we also have what's called a response number. A response number is how many actually apparatus rolled out for the year for some sort of call. And that count is 19,518 in 2024. We experienced a 44% growth over 14 years, which averages out to about 3% average per year. This one's a little busy, but it's a lot of information. I'm not going to go over all of it unless you guys got questions, and we can definitely go back to it if you do. But this basically talks about NFPA and ISO turnout times and travel time, alarm on-scene time, and full complement on-scene time. Basically, turnout time is how fast we get dressed after we get the alarm and get onto the trucks. The benchmark is 1 minute and 20 seconds. We typically do it in 2024, 90th percentile. We did it in 1 minute and 40 seconds, about 20 seconds difference, and we're constantly working on trying to get better at doing that. Some of it is station design, such as if you're upstairs, it takes longer to get downstairs. That's why, for instance, they put fire poles in. They put 2 in, actually. 2 fire poles in. Whether or not the firefighters use them or not is a different story. Travel time is first due. Travel times from the time that they actually leave the station to the time they get on scene. 4 minutes is what most people want, or what NFPA and ISO wants, and also accreditation looks for that as well. We're typically doing it in about 7 minutes and 24 seconds in 2024, and that's for emergency calls only. Our dispatch time, though, and the city manager wanted me to bring this up to you, even though we don't control it, the county has our dispatch. And typically in 2024, their average dispatch time, meaning the time that they got the phone calls till the time they pick it up and dispatch it to us, is about 3 minutes and 3 seconds. So if you add that to every one of those calls, that's what that last column is over there. The full complement on scene, which is 8 minutes for ISO and NFPA, we typically do it in 15 minutes and 42 seconds. Why such a broad range? Well, the full complement ISO for a residential single structure fire is 16 to 17 people they want on scene. That's the full complement. We typically do that in about 18 minutes and 45 seconds counting dispatch time. So you can see there's a big diverse difference in that. So we don't even have enough people in the city to bring that up to a full number without emptying all the stations. So how do we do it right now? We do it through DeLand, we do it through the county, and we do it through Orange City's assistants when they come in, and we do the same thing for them. So any questions about that? Because I know this is a lot, so we can probably stop on the screen if we needed to. Any questions right now for that screen? All right. Strategic placement, that means taking our data analysis and demonstrating how strategically relocating or adding stations will improve our performance, which we're going to talk about a little bit. Right here, this is kind of the dots that you see, the yellow dots and the red dots. Those are where our fire stations are currently. What Chief Snyder and myself and the city manager have talked about over the last few months is talking about adding or relocating some stations. And the big circles with the numbers in them and also the letters in them are what we've been talking about. I'll start with the easy one, 64. That's the metal building you looked at. We think that building needs to be rebuilt so it's a bigger, more efficient, and more modernized building. And we would like to not necessarily move it because it's in a great location, but it's not sitting on enough property. So we have property next door currently that we're trying to look at to see if we can get that property. But that's a whole nother story for another day. But that's what we're trying to look at for 64. The nice thing about that, while we're building the new station, we can still habitat the building that we currently have and not have to move anybody anywhere. So that is a nice advantage to rebuilding that station. The new building in District 1 is out there, hopefully somewhere in the neighborhood of Cortland and Hallover area or Captain area. There's a big hole out there, mostly because of travel time. It takes a long time to get out there from whatever station we respond from. And there's a big hole in District 1 they don't have any fire station in District 1, so this will be the first station for District 1 to get a fire station. 62 and 62B, that's one of the proposals that we have of taking Diamond Street out and taking it away from the fire department and recycling that building for another department or making it logistics, or I'll just throw that out there, or anything like that. But 62 and 62B are where our software called Dark Horse has said would be a better location for 2 fire stations to be able to take away call volume from 61 and also enhance the response time to 62 and 61's area. Any questions about this particular map? 62B, by the way, would be a fire station that would be relocated towards the other end of Providence. Right around the Murphy area or around if you're familiar with the Winn-Dixie, I can't remember what it's called now. Anybody? Whatever that grocery store is called now.
Super Key Food.
Huh?
Super Key Food, is that what you're talking about?
It might be, I don't remember. But that plaza right there on Providence Boulevard, somewhere in that area is near the Normandy area is where we would want to relocate another station from 62. Now, that Dark Horse program that I talked about, this is one of the maps, and it's a little hard to kind of look at and go, what does that mean? But basically, all that red, how Dark Horse gets its data is it takes its data by saying, how many times do we meet NFPA criteria? Remember that table I showed you about the 4-minute travel time and all those kind of numbers? How often do we, in a 90 percentile, how often do we hit the mark? And it associates those colors up there to how often we do, and red is bad. That's what you really need to know. Red is bad. Those are all the areas that we're not meeting marks very often at all. Green is good, obviously, and anywhere in between gets better to worse depending on which way you're going in the direction of color. Those are all of our current stations, currently 61, 62, 63, 64, and 65. As you see, the red is in a lot of locations, and if you look, kind of remember, I don't know if this will show up. If you look up at the screen, these are the locations that we're looking at, and if you looked at the map I talked about of Murphy and Providence, and also I didn't tell you about the one where Saxon and Normandy area, which is the old CVS that's still there, or I'm sorry, Walgreens, that's still there. That's kind of the area we'd like to put the second station to replace 62. Those would cover those gaps. And then if you see up here in District 1's area, there's a lot of gap in District 1 areas. So we strategically put these where these dots came to be. Now, I'm going to show you another map. This is the current performance. This is the current, or this would be the projected performance. Projected is keyword. Projected performance if we moved those stations and built the new stations we're talking about. We would increase to 67.54% of the time, and you can see there's a lot more green on this board than there was on the last map that I showed you. Also, I had GIS, Nicole Robles, and I like to thank her for that because she did an awesome job. This shows you a 5-minute response time from each of the current stations. If you notice, and this she had no idea about the data that I already had. I had her built this map from scratch. If you notice, the holes are in the same spot. Totally different way of coming up with the data. This has to deal with drive time by AVL. The other one had to do with how many times we actually met criteria in the history of all the call volume. And they both show the same thing. So to me, you take two different data points and they both point mostly to the same direction. That's a pretty good indicator. So faster emergency response times, and what does that mean to you guys? Remember I talked about service. Well, we also did an evaluation by Fitch and Associates a couple years ago, and what they told us is that depending on what you want to aim your guns at is what you're going to get. So if we want a 4-minute travel time, then we need somewhere in the neighborhood, according to Fitch, this is not my numbers, according to Fitch and Associates, it's 21 stations to get a 4-minute response time across the city more than 90% of the time. That's a lot of stations. So is that something we can achieve? Probably not, but if you guys want to, I'm all in. But to get the more in the neighborhood of 6 to 7, we would need anywhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 11 stations. So right now we have 5. So that kind of helps you kind of see where we're at with travel time and where that came from. And that came from a whole nother data source, which was Fitch and Associates. All this stuff actually comes from raw data that comes from the county CAD system, which tomorrow, everybody cross your fingers, please, on another note. We're switching over at 5 in the morning, and I'm very nervous. This is nothing to me right here. I'm more nervous about will the calls all come in at 5 o'clock in the morning. So that's going on. But that's where all that data comes from. So we want to look at improved performance and service coverage for the residents. And again, that's up to what coverage do we want to provide. Do you guys want to provide for the citizens? That's what we have to decide, and that's going to tell us how many stations we need. That's going to tell us how many things we need to modernize and how many units we need to have on the road. And also, another consideration is reduce strain on the existing stations and personnel. We have something called unit utilization time, and what that says nationwide, and NFPA used to also say it, but in their latest edition it doesn't talk about a max number. But the most common number is a 30% look at number. That means that 30% of the time the crews are spending on actual calls. That's not taking in consideration their breaks, not taking in consideration their training, or taking in consideration returning from calls or going to calls. It takes on only in consideration of their work time. So that's why they shoot for a 30% number. Right now we have one unit that's over that utilization number, which is Medic 61. And we have one unit that's approaching that utilization number, which is Medic 63. And one unit that's already progressing pretty fast towards that magical number of 25%, which is what Fitch and Associates says is when you should consider looking at other units to do the same job that they do. So in that's Medic 64, which is already at almost 20% utilization for year-to-date data. Uh-oh, I lost it again. So station alignment. If we did the station alignment at Station 62 like we talked about, it'll help improve travel times. It will definitely update our current facility infrastructure. And by doing that, we potentially relocate 62 and add one new location in 62's response area, which I showed you on that 62A, 62B on the map. That would be the one at the Walgreens, and then the one at near the Normandy Providence section, a little down from there. Expansion of coverage, again, we talked about this already too. The new station in northeastern Deltona in District 1. That has a very extended emergency response times currently in this district, increased, and they just bought property out there. And Doc, do you know the number that's going in that? It's like 300 houses or something that's going in that one plot. Yeah, I don't know the exact number, but it's a lot of houses. So there's a lot of increased housing going in that area, and there's, like I said, there's no fire station in District 1, so that would help District 1 a lot. Long travel times from current stations due to road layout, and that's if it's coming from the station that originally got it on first alarm. If that station's already on another call, then it's coming from a secondary station, which means a secondary station, which would probably be 65 or 61, depending where it is. They have twice as much distance to cover to get to that same call. And that's another consideration that we have to talk about is when we look at these times, we only look at the times of the actual time itself, not of where they're coming from. So if station 61 is on a call and a call comes in their area, we have to take from another area to get that call covered. So then you have two open areas. You have 61 open and wherever that other unit came from. So there's potentials of having, so that's why we have to talk about not only stations, but how many units do we need to cover all those stations. The goal is to update and better locate our fire stations. When complete, we'll potentially update, relocate, and add stations. This will take us from 5 stations potentially to 7 stations covering the city of Deltona. And we build not only for today, but for the future of our city. I don't take credit for that statement. Chief Snyder had that statement already up there, so I'll give him credit for that. And that's all I got. I'm ready for your questions. Fire away.
Before we go to the commission, I'm going to go to public comment first, and then we'll go to the commission.
I'm going to go get some water then real quick.
Okay.
Has been reduced to this recommendation, that recommendation. The bottom line is that recommendation. The bottom line is people will start going brain dead after 4 minutes. And that's why they're looking for a travel time of 4 minutes. So that you can be there before this person, whoever the victim is, ends up in a hospital bed in a diaper for the rest of their life. From the looks of some of the other things that I saw that he presented, a major part of our problem is not the fire department, it is the communications to our fire department. And we're not talking about that tonight, but I truly hope that we address that at some point in time. These guys are doing a great job, and the presentation is great. And the thing, I don't know if any of you ever took statistics, but the chief did something that was extremely effective. He looked at the problem from 2 different statistical vantage points. Now, in laboratory technology, they call that repeated and confirmed. What he is saying is beyond reproach and beyond a doubt. So, I would take his lead, and I would support whatever it is that the chief is looking to have us do, because he knows what's best.
Courtney Cross-Burgers, please.
Good evening, Courtney Crossburgers. The first question I had is, you didn't have names of where the fire stations were? I know you guys all know it, but I don't, and I don't think everybody does. The only one you said was Diamond Street, and I actually knew where that one was. But would accreditation help us with getting grants and money for our fire department? Because to start off, I'm 100%, 1,000% behind the fire department. I really admire Chief Snyder, and I don't know you yet, but I'm sure you're awesome too. So I want to do what we can do for our fire department, absolutely. So I was wondering if accreditation would help us out with some money from the state or county. And then I had a question about the one on Diamond Street, because that's off of Deltona Boulevard, I think, correct? Yes, off of Deltona Boulevard, thank you. So you're taking it from there, which I understand because it's back there, but then you're putting one over on Normandy and Providence and one over by Saxon. What about the other end of Deltona Boulevard? Who covers them now? And I actually live in Twin Lakes, so any of those are fine for me, but I was just wondering what happens to the other end of Deltona Boulevard if you take it from there and move it in totally 2 different directions. So that was a question I had on that. That was it. Thank you.
Mayor, that ends public comments.
Commissioner Avila Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to ask, are you guys already in negotiation for the Walgreens property? Or is just hoping you can push them out?
No, Commissioner, that's just the area. We're not going after that property whatsoever at this point. I'm not aware of them being out of business or anything. So that general area, to go to Ms. Burgos's question also, was somewhere between the Saxon up to the Masonic Lodge area. Somewhere in that area will cover southern of Amazon building, that whole area up there. And then the other would not be all the way just down in Providence. Right now, they're just circles on the map, so there's no guarantee where, but the southern one would cover South Deltona Boulevard. But right now, it's not one set property we're looking at anywhere on these maps.
Okay, what about the empty property across from the other side of Walgreens? Is that, I know there's houses around that, but,
We actually looked into that at one point, not just for this station, but in general, because it could be a potential commercial area. The gentleman owns it, is not interested in selling it. He'd like to lease the property. Our economic development director did contact that person, so right now, that's really not on the table for anybody.
all right, thank you, Bush, for the presentation.
You're welcome. Any other questions from the dais? Commissioner Novick and then Commissioner Howington.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, thanks for a great presentation. I know what goes into that work. I am 100% behind new fire stations. I'm 100% behind renovating the ones that we have. But fire stations do not put out fires. They don't have wheels on them. Equipment and manpower that will go into these new stations, that's what puts fires out, that's what saves lives, that's what reduces response times. I am appalled to see that dispatch has a 3-minute processing time. That is completely unacceptable. Not our fault, but that I would be on the computer every day sending emails about that. When we had our own dispatch in Deltona, our processing time was 38 seconds. 38 seconds from the time the call was received to the time the tones went out. There's a problem with that. The gentleman said people die, go brain dead in 4 minutes. He's 100% correct. We're not going to get there in 1 minute. If we put a fire station on every corner, we're not going to get there in 1 minute. So that processing time needs to be worked on. And hopefully this new CAD that's going to come online tomorrow morning will assist in that. Yeah. I think what's important here is that, again, we do things in a strategic manner and that we look at purchasing people and equipment. As an example, and I'm at a little bit of an advantage here, okay, I understand that. As an example, a structure fire alarm, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, you're sending 4 engines, a battalion, and an AMBO, right?
2 battalions.
2 battalions, okay. And we only have 1, so that comes from somebody else.
Correct.
So basically, the first engine is the attack engine. They drag the hoses into the house. The second engine is the water supply. They hook to a hydrant, bring the water to the first engine, and everything after that is manpower. You got 3 people on an engine, so you're putting 12 people, the ambulance, and 2 battalions on scene. So we have a new $2 million squad coming. It's going to have 3 people on it. That's ridiculous. We want to put our money where our mouth is, put 6 people on that squad. Give them the manpower, put 6 people on that squad, make it a real squad by putting the manpower on it. The chief can adjust his response and send 2 engines, the attack engine, the water supply, and the squad. You're now leaving 2 additional manpower engines in their first due area. That will help reduce response times. 79% of our call load is still medical?
It varies, but yeah, about that.
Basically 79%, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's where we need to concentrate. If we want to look at reducing response times, we want to get more medic units. A medic unit is $400,000, 2 people on it. That gives you 6 people, $1 million, so you're talking $1.5 million for an ambulance, roughly. Okay, that's got to go into one of these new fire stations that you're talking about building. So, to me, to put ambulances in existing fire stations, because the way we operate is an engine goes to a medical call. It has trained ALS people on it, advanced life support equipment. A transport unit, be it evac or one of our own, comes in to take the patient from the engine and transport them to definitive care. Now, to complicate the current situation, 2.9 million people in Florida have lost their Medicaid and or their affordable health care. That means more people are not going to get preventative care. That means we're going to have a sicker population. That means the hospital is already routinely on divert or on extended bed wait, where the patient sits in the ambulance bay and is waiting for a bed to get into the ED based on how critical they are. Which means that now when Engine 64 goes out on the next medical call and their Medic 64 is sitting at the hospital waiting to unload the patient, there's a longer on-scene time that Engine 64 has to wait for another transport unit to come either from the county, from the other side of Deltona, in many cases from Port Orange or DeLand. So if we want to try and address this response time issue, which is the most critical component of all of this, we need to put manpower and equipment in the existing stations. Station 65 has room for some more people. Station 62 can take another ambulance. And the chief can move equipment around. He can do move-ups to cover areas if we have additional manpower and equipment before we get stations built. So renovating Station 64 and expanding its capabilities, I personally think that's the first priority and probably the easiest one to fix, because I think we can get that land adjacent to 64, build that, and then house some additional people and equipment there. So for additional property down the road, I don't know how many of you today attended the Deltona Wild info session that we had, but I learned something about this thing called banking, where they can take developers' money basically and move it into a banked area. We can look at doing the same concept with that and adding a component to purchase fire station property as a result of that. So I would say we've got our work cut out for us in the next year or two in terms of what we do with the budgeted money and what we do with future budgeted money. But people and equipment is what's going to save lives and reduce response times, and renovating what we already have, and then look at these areas to fill these holes that he's talking about. If you noticed on that one graphic that he had, even though District 1, Commission District 1 currently doesn't have a fire station up there in that area, they also, by looking at some of those colors in that and his dots that he had, I don't think they've got a very high call volume out there compared to the lower end of 62, the Deltona Boulevard, Diamond Street area.
Is that a question? Historically, they do, but it goes in waves and actions. And GIS also made me a density map, but I thought that was a lot for you guys. But we can definitely talk about it at a later date when we kind of start. But she also made a density map that shows how dense the call volume is in each area, and those pockets that I showed also are covered by density dots.
Right.
So
again, I don't disagree with anything that you're asking for. I just think we probably should look at adjusting the timeline and strategically what we do first. Building a fire station, if you don't have people and equipment to put in it, is kind of irrelevant. But we can do things parallel. You may need some additional temporary staff to manage those projects, because that's a whole nother component that we haven't talked about. Who's going to actually manage these construction of these projects? I've done that before, and it's very time consuming and late to be able to do that. There's a lot of moving parts to that. So Chief, great job on the presentation. Really appreciate all the work that you put into this, and I will support moving this forward in whatever fashion that it comes to us. Thank you.
Mayor, can I ride something off of what he said just to make sure I clarify a little bit on the transport units that I keep wanting to say Chief Novick, that Commissioner Novick talked about, that's only if, they only count if they're our transport unit. If they are Volusia County EMS, they have no fire ability whatsoever. They do not count towards anything on our fire scenes. They do not count towards the people. They don't count for help. The only thing they can do is somebody gets hurt, they can take care of them. Other than that, they're useless. And I don't mean that in a bad way. That's what their one job only personnel. That's reason why, one of the reasons why we have moved towards transport in the past is because we have a multi-dimensional personnel that are on those ambulances. So, thank you.
Good point.
Before we go to Commissioner Howington, Commissioner Caldwell, are you trying to speak because you're on one and not the other? So I can put you right after Commissioner Howington. All right, Commissioner Howington, you're up.
Thank you. So I was told that we have a communications hub at the corner of Sterling Silver Boulevard and Saxon that can be utilized by a transport. I don't know if that's true, but have we considered using satellite locations to help expedite getting to certain areas faster? Is that something that we've looked at?
So yes, we have looked at different spots in the past, but it really all boils down to when we're talking about transport. And it's kind of off subject, but it really boils down to permission from the county in order to transport. And that's what's coming up with our fourth transport that we were previously told we could have when we did certain things for the county. We did those things by moving the transport unit to Station 64 where we didn't want it in the first place. And then when we requested the fourth transport this year that we had full support from y'all, full support from the city manager, we were ready to go with it, and they have denied us up to this point. And city manager and myself are looking into that now. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. And then with the project, as you guys were looking into the detail, did it take into account new subdivisions and the increased traffic? Because obviously, as the traffic grows on our arterial roads, that's going to impact response times. So how is that being mitigated, or was that captured?
Yes, Nicole from GIS also made a layer on our maps, and I could have brought it, but it would have taken a longer time to do this. But it also shows all the future, already approved future, and things that are in the queue areas. And like, for instance, to bring up Commissioner Novick's point about increased staffing, which I brought up in the PowerPoint, is 65 is going to have a tremendous amount of both commercial and residential growth when they put that, I don't know what they call it, that hospital community or whatever they're doing out there. It's kind of like a John Knox Village almost, but it's not. When they do that, plus all the growth that's going on Normandy Boulevard, it would be my suggestion to start staffing both a squad and an engine or a tower out there together. And if we could do that sooner than later, that would be a great project to move on. But yes, we are looking at that as well.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioner Caldwell and then Commissioner Santiago.
Yes, I 100% support the fire department and all you do for the community. I have a question on the Station 63 and 64 that you talked about possibly buying the land next door to it. Is that
64.
64? We're definitely doing that?
No, there's no definite in
And what does
any
that look like
locations at this point.
What does that look like if we don't acquire that property? Are we talking about going up?
Yeah, we'd
there-
have
is
to
there
go,
room
we'd have to look at other properties, and then what we do is we find other property, we plug it into our Dark Horse software program, and it'll kind of strategically or data-driven strategy of if it's a good location or not a good location.
And the location 63, is there room for expansion there?
We don't know the answer to that currently. It's going to depend on what an architect comes in and says yay or nay and how big the station's going to
That
be.
brings up-
The location's awesome,
I know the
for sure.
locations are awesome.
Yeah.
But that brings up my point, like Mr. Novick saying, going up here. Isn't there a longer turnout when we go up as far as getting the folks out of the
Vertical with the stations you're talking
Vertical,
about?
yes.
There could be, but that's part of training, to be honest with you. But there could be.
But
It
as
depends
you
on
said,
how you
but
build
as you
the
said, you
station.
can't make them use the bowls.
Yeah. It depends on how you build the station, to be honest. How you set it up, like what's upstairs compared to what's downstairs. And that's all data driven by other people who have done it.
Okay.
And that comes from hiring the right people to build your buildings and to tell you, like Commissioner Novick was talking about, it's changed a little bit over time. There's better advice out there from contractors and what they call, where they put all three of them together, the contractor, the architect, and the builder, all three in a system. We could go that route, which is what we were going to do with the new training ground that kind of went away.
The satellite locations, like Dory had spoken about, so that's dictated by the county. We can't just buy a new transport and put it in service anywhere at a
No.
location. It has to get approved. Okay. How often do second calls usually come into the same station? Is it, and I'm asking out of ignorance.
So
really
I had a data sheet and I forgot to print off them with me, but it depends on the area. So usually the busier areas have double the opportunity of having a double call. But 61's area is about 36% of the time of their call volume is from duplicated calls, from other calls that come in 61's area.
All right, thank you, Chief.
And a lot of this data, just to let y'all know, might be changing over the next year as far as zones, because the new CAD systems goes by AVL or closest unit, where this was all done by grids. So it's going to change it a little bit. The data will be the same, but it'll be a different type of data.
Thank you.
Commissioner Santiago?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Swisher. Great presentation. Long overdue. I've heard this before, so I'm glad it's back. These buildings are very old, need to be renovated or updated, so I appreciate your presentation.
We're going to include your old office in that.
That's good. That's good. Frida office, huh?
That's right.
Couple of things. I know you said from 5 stations potentially to 7. Now, if you remove Diamond, are the other 2, 62A and B, will that be like smaller stations for more of transport?
The city manager and I have been talking about that. There is that possibility, but at the same time, there's other considerations to consider. But there could be satellite stations like she was talking about. If we got permission to transport, we could look at just transport stations as well.
Right.
I like to call it what I call the core stations. There should be core stations of fire service type fire stations, and then in between those core stations would be the satellite stations.
Got
if
it.
that's the route we chose to go.
Okay. As far as transport, know you mentioned it was approved, then denied. Is there anything that we can do to help you as far as talking to the county, having a meeting? What is the next step into getting that approval for the 4th transport unit?
I'll leave that to the city manager.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. We're going to get a group together. We've talked informally with the county on several occasions. It seems that they appreciate trying to do the county-wide system, and we appreciate having a better response, taking care of ourselves and the neighboring community around us a little bit. So I think we're going to just get all the people together in the room at one time and say, what's the issue? What's the concern with the county releasing
Right.
some more? Remember, an ambulance can show up at a scene, they just can't transport. So
Right,
having an ambulance,
right.
that doesn't make it useless that we can't transport. It still has
Only unless the county is not available.
Yes.
Then we'll transport. Or
Yes.
unless it's,
So we're in a
Like-
situation, just as big picture, is that we show up at a scene, we're waiting for another ambulance to come, take somebody away while we're sitting there. Now, I've already directed the staff that if there's any emergency situations,
Right.
we're going. We'll deal with the fallout afterward.
Perfect.
But currently, we're taking care of someone on scene, another ambulance shows up, the county, they get to take the person while we just go back to our house. So we could probably be better responsive if we had more in-house.
exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Swisher, and you have my full support. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am.
Vice Mayor Harriet?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. I appreciate the presentation. To Commissioner Novick's point, I agree. It's firefighters who put out fires. It's also paramedics and EMTs that handle our medical calls. Do we know what our wall time is at the hospitals?
I don't know what the most current data is. It was at 45 minutes a couple months ago, but it depends on the season, to be honest with you. If it's a holiday season, it gets longer because we have winter birds come down. And it's not just the city of Deltona that occupies the bed spaces. It's Orange City county areas, and people who are transferred from even out of the county into these hospitals. So it's not just Deltona that drives those times.
Yeah. I'm glad somebody brought up the 4th unit already. I was excited when we approved that a year ago, a little over a year ago. I'm disappointed to hear that there's back and forth going on with the county, and I appreciate the city manager's approach to getting the right people in the room and just having one discussion about it. Regardless of how that works, have we looked into the SAFER grant and a multi-year plan to increase staffing?
So we actually filed for the SAFER grant this previous year, so we're still waiting for the response for that. So yes, we have.
Okay. Fantastic. I think that's a great way for us to plan for an increased level of staffing to go along with the 4th unit and then additional units. And then on another note, I appreciate the data-driven approach and using 2 different ways to find out that I think you're spot on. If we can come at, if the data shows similar information from 2 different perspectives, then I think there's a lot to be said for that. When it comes to building stations and buying land, I would ask that this commission respect the process and not publicize specifics too much so that it doesn't hinder the purchase and the opportunity to get a fair price and a good price on a piece of land. And then I would also ask, I would like to see us go out to bid on an architect that can design a station, and then we use that station design and layout to look for suitable pieces of property. That way we can try to have some similarities and consistencies between stations, because we know that firefighters don't work at the same station their entire life. There are times where they have to move around, and I think that consistency helps a lot with the turnout times and whatnot, being familiar with the layout. And so that's it. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Chief, quick question. Have we looked at some of the other cities? I know we kind of talked a little bit about it, but some of the micro fire stations, maybe where the data is showing that we're getting more ambulance calls than we are fire calls. Maybe that's another route to go to help with at least the response times. And I know that's going to change, obviously, because nobody can dictate or kind of know when somebody's going to have a heart attack, for example, versus a fire. But some of the micro fire stations that I've seen, a couple of cities, I believe St. Cloud was one of them, and some of the other ones, those seem to be very effective.
We have not toured micro stations. I just got done touring Station 39, which is Orange City's new station, which is a little bit of a smaller, what they would call a satellite station. I don't know if you'd call it a micro station, but we just got done touring that station, and it's doable for sure. But like I said, my advice would be for ISO accreditation and otherwise is that we have our core stations and then our satellite stations in between those core stations. And I don't believe we're at the core station level yet. I think we need at least those 7 stations to be core, but that's, me and the city manager will talk about that and go from there.
Thank you. Commissioner Vila Vasquez, and just a reminder, we have about 11 minutes, so.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, so Station 62, that's also very important because of the location near I-4, right? The I-4 calls usually are taken by Station 62, am I correct?
It depends on where it is on I-4, but yes, that is one of the stations that responds. Any of the stations can, but yes, that's one of the primary stations. But the problem with 62 is that it comes out of a residential neighborhood and then finally gets into one of the main roads, and then from there can go to another main road or another, but it's a long haul because it's from where the location is at 62. So, but by data, depending on where you put the other station, that station could be fine. It's just going to depend on what kind of land we can get, where we get it at, and what size stations we put, wherever we put.
Thank you. And every time I drive by accidents, I always see Station 62 out there on
Yeah,
I-4.
yeah, they are definitely one of the I-4 drivers, for sure.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Novick, and just please be mindful of the time.
Yeah, real quick. I just want to point out, in the 14 years I've been retired from the fire department, we've had a 44% increase in growth in call volume. We've added 1 unit, Medic 64. That includes the 8 years I was on the commission, so I'm guilty. Okay? But we've added no new units to match that growth. We've added no new fire units. We added a medic unit. So keep in mind, 1.5 years build time for an engine now?
Yes, well, at least.
At least 1.5 years to build a fire truck from the day you order it. 1.5 years. So if we ordered 2 new fire trucks tonight, it'd be 1.5 years before they got here.
Yeah, yeah, it's really minimum is about 2 years right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So keep that in mind as we move forward. If we have these great ideas, even if we implement them, you're still looking at 1.5 years to 2 years before you actually have that piece of equipment, unless you buy something off the rack.
Which is not very often anymore,
Right.
as often as it used to be. But that goes with ambulances as well. So ambulances don't have as long of a build time, but they also have extended build times as well.
Thank you, Mayor.
Vice Mayor Harriet, and again, mindful of the time, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The first thing I'd like to also just add is that wherever we look at these stations, I would like to make sure that we incorporate these stations into the community. I think that these need to be a pillar of the community. They need to be something that all the neighbors look at and think, wow, I'm proud to live close to these fire stations. If we do go the route of looking at satellite stations, I would love to see those incorporated into commercial areas so that they can really even more be incorporated into the community. And then the second thing that I had was, it's been mentioned briefly, but the ISO rating. What is our current ISO rating?
2.
And can you give like a real brief, and I know that this is a hard ask, but a brief rundown on what the ISO rating means to the community?
Insurance rates.
Okay, perfect. And so it's not just an arbitrary number, but it is reflective of how the insurance industry and that rating affects the insurance value or the insurance cost for each individual home. So the better the rating, the lower the insurance cost per home can be. And that's all I've got. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, City Manager, any comments? All right, this meeting's adjourned until public comments.